Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with James Rampton, columnist for The Independent, and Kirsty Buchanan, political commentator and former advisor to Theresa May. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. Almost 9 in 10 people have little or no faith in the political class, according to research published in the Metro. The Financial Times has spoken to Germany's defence minister, who's urging weapons suppliers to speed up European rearmament. The Eye reports measles surge fears for summer holidays after a child dies amid low jab uptake. A warning over an Israeli ethnic cleansing plan for Gaza is on the front of The Guardian. The Sun reports Prince Harry is ready to talk to his father, the King, after approving a peace summit between their aides. Their headline, Time to Clear the Air, Papa. And we are joined tonight by James Rampton, columnist for The Independent, and Kirsty Buchanan, political commentator and former advisor to Theresa May. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the front page of the Financial Times. Wealthy take out life insurance policies to soften hit from inheritance tax. In quotes here, life insurance is having a moment. That's according to an associate director at an insurance broker. What is happening, Kirsty?
Well, you'll recall in the budget that Rachel Reeves introduced a new inheritance tax threshold of 20% for estates over $1 million. And at the time, all the emphasis was on the impact that would have on farmers. But there's also a new inheritance tax for large companies, family businesses in terms. And what this is basically saying is that there's been a massive increase in demand for people to meet this payment through life insurance. Settling the tax bill on an estate by taking out policies that will pay out in the event of their death. And the story in its own right feels a bit technical, but what it does highlight for me today is this ongoing row about the possibility of a wealth tax being brought in. We saw a lot of Labour MPs rowing in behind the idea of having a 2% tax on assets worth more than 10 million. Former Labour leader Neil Kinnock's a great advocate of this. And Heidi Alexander was out doing the rounds on broadcast this morning, the Transport Secretary, and she was asked specifically about this. And she didn't rule it out. And she said, look, any changes we have in the budget coming up in the autumn will be based on fairness. And I think a lot of people have read that as an indicator that a wealth tax is something that is being actively considered by the government. Now, tomorrow, Rachel Reeves gives her Mansion House speech, so it will be a big moment in the fiscal calendar for her tomorrow. I think a lot of people will be poring over what she says tomorrow to see if she's giving any indication of when tax rises will come and who they will hit.
James, it's not a matter of if, is it, now? It's definitely when.
I think that's right, but also it's hugely important. We saw when, unfortunately, she became tearful in the House of Commons last week, the markets moved. Her position, her every word is scrutinised by the markets and by the city. So you're absolutely right. The Mansion House speech will be poured over like, the most important document that's ever been printed. I do feel for her, and I know politicians choose to be politicians. She has a 20 to 30 billion black hole that has to be filled, not helped by the government's increasing commitment to defence, being urged to do so by Donald Trump and perhaps painted into a corner by him. So where is she going to find this money? A wealth tax may be a bad idea, it may discourage entrepreneurs, but it looks like from the signals that we're getting from cabinet ministers that may be where they're heading.
Well, look, this is the trouble with wealth taxes, isn't it? They're very popular with the public. I think a recent YouGov poll said 78% of people favoured a wealth tax. It seems to be a fair way forward, but of the 12 countries that have tried one, 8 have dropped it because it's administratively very hard. The thing is that wealthy people can hire lawyers to get their way around the system, and they're mobile. So actually, the much-touted £11 billion that everyone anticipates that we'd get from this will probably be a good deal less than this. We've already seen non-doms leaving in their droves. And I think even if they don't bring it in, if Labour wants to, then they need to shut this conversation down now if they don't want to bring it in. Because right now, if I had assets like this and this was being allowed to percolate in the public debate, I'd be moving my assets or finding a way to shield them from this tax, which is exactly why they don't work. So if they're not going to bring it in, they need to shut down this conversation. What is also extraordinary to me is that they have allowed the debate to be framed going into the budget as basically saying, we're going to have to increase taxes, even though Rachel Reeves said last year, this is it, it's a one-time deal, I'm not coming back for any more tax rises, because we, the government, can't push through spending cuts, even though we have a majority of 165. We can't get that through our own backbenchers. So tax rises will follow because we don't have the power to force spending cuts through, even though, you know, our fiscal credibility with the markets is on a knife edge. But the backbenchers won't accept it. We have the 6th highest debt out of all the advanced countries. I don't know if you read the OBR report this week on our long-term fiscal sustainability, but it's the stuff of nightmares. No wonder Rachel Reeves looks haunted. You know, so I think either the soft left and the hard left of the Labour Party need to have a reality check, or the government needs to, you know, to shut down this wealth tax conversation before it does even more damage and we see more of a flight out of this country.
What's your hunch, James, on whether we are going to see this wealth tax? It's been much mooted, hasn't it, around the
I think we will, because, as you rightly say, Kirsty, it is popular. Most people aren't wealthy, and there's a culture of envy. And, you know, Schadenfreude is a German word, but it's a very British characteristic, you know, the joy in other people's pain. So if most of us are not very well off, and we see well-off people being taxed to the hilt, we enjoy that. But whether it's actually going to be an effective way of raising £11 billion is a very different matter. She's in a real corner, though, and I don't envy her, I must say.
But it's not going to hit us, is it? We're not going to get hit by it.
Well, I don't know. I've just moved all my money to the Caymans. Oh, no, I've revealed that on telly. Yeah.
Kirsty, let's move to the Eye. And this story that was first in the papers yesterday, and this is this possible surge of measles. 17 cases at Alderhay Hospital, Children's Hospital in Liverpool. One child has died from measles, other complications as well, but the child did have measles. It's very worrying because what it's pointing to, and certainly what Alderhay has brought to the fore, is that there's a very, very low uptake of vaccinations now.
Yeah, now, we don't know the vaccine status of this child that's sadly died. It is mercifully very rare in this country that children will die of measles because there is normally such a high uptake of the MMR vaccine. It is one of the great success stories of medical progress in the 20th and 21st century. And normally the take-up's around about 84, 85%, isn't it? But there are pockets in this country where the take-up is far lower than that. Liverpool is one.
Yes, I think it's about 73%.
Yeah, parts of London are the same, bits of Birmingham, the take-up is low for a multiplicity of reasons. I think some of this is exacerbated by the disinformation that spreads on social media. Never get your medical advice from X would be my advice. And some of this is being driven by the kind of anti-COVID vaccine lobby as well, just creating this entire sense around it. The other problem, of course, is we're about a week away from summer holidays, and there are measles outbreaks from mainland Europe as well. So what Alderhay and other medical staff are saying is, look, you know, if you're coming in for other, you know, treatment at Alderhay now, we can give you the vaccine now, please take it up. Don't listen to the disinformation online about it. It's far more dangerous for your child to get measles if they're not vaccinated. Well, it's pretty nasty if you are. It can be a pretty nasty thing to have to go through. But it is a very, very dangerous disease if you're not vaccinated.
Yes, and Alderhay are offering the vaccines in their accident and emergency for those.
And they've been going on social media and really promoting this. The WHO recommends a level of 95% to achieve herd immunity. And we're pretty good in this country, but as you say, there are pockets that aren't. And there have been cases like this in the past. I remember the Andrew Wakefield, who was discredited. He produced a report that said MMR caused autism, and that caused a massive drop in people taking up the MMR. But it also meant that there was a huge outburst of measles. There was, near where I live in London, there was a huge outbreak. And so if there's even a tiny, tiny drop, it has an instant and very catastrophic effect. It's a highly infectious disease. It can lead to encephalitis, the swelling of the brain, and that's horrendous for anyone. But to see it in a child is absolutely heartbreaking. So people have got to listen to this and absolutely get the jab if they can.
Yeah, the problem is it's not that you know, parents are forgetting to get the jab. Some are actively electing not to have their children vaccinated. So you're fighting against that, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The genesis of this was this completely bogus, discredited report that MMR can give your child autism, and that is what fueled it. I think it's been the kind of anti-vaccine lobby has risen exponentially post-COVID. There's all sorts of conspiracy theories about COVID vaccines and a great big wealth of misinformation. It's interesting that Melanie Dawes, the head of Ofcom, was on the broadcast round this morning talking about the new online safety bill. And one of the things that, you know, it isn't encompassed by this is this sort of general harms that are caused by misinformation and disinformation being spread. And you can really, because algorithms feed you what you want to look at, you can go down a rabbit hole of this kind of medical COVID conspiracy theory, anti-vaxxer theories, really, really easily online. It's incredibly dangerous.
And the worrying thing is if you say, well, no, medical science proves that that's not the case. Well, that's exactly what they want you to believe. They've so bought into the conspiracy mentality that anything that comes from an official source is automatically suspect. And, you know, look what happened in the US. Robert F. Kennedy, who is an avowed anti-vaxxer, is now health secretary. So it's a very, very well-established thing in the world, promulgated by social media and causing unbelievable amounts of harm across the world.
There was a wonderful podcast on at the moment about the impact of a family of a mother who disappeared into kind of anti-vaxxer conspiracy theories online and has convinced herself, and unfortunately thousands of other people, that she cured her own cancer with, you know, healthy eating, and is spreading this disinformation, you know, to thousands and thousands of followers.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous, though, isn't it?
Hugely
it's so dangerous because you will have people who are very vulnerable, you know, particularly cancer sufferers, who are looking for any sort of cure and then following this advice and actually hastening their deaths.
And we
Totally,
have,
getting
yes.
treatment.
You know, and we have the NHS here, some of the best doctors in the world, the best treatment in the world. It's all free, and that people will think, no, mung beans, that's the way to go to cure my cancer.
Quinoa is the answer.
James and Kirsty, thank you very much for the moment. We're going to take a break. Coming up, we'll discuss this story on the front of the Metro. Its headline, Politicians, we don't trust any of you. That's the headline, not my thoughts. Stay with us.
A lifeline for millions of people living on both sides of one of the most volatile international borders.
It's dams like these that have become inflection points between the two nuclear-armed neighbors, which could potentially lead to water wars in the future. A terror attack has shattered the peace and tranquility of Kashmir. At least 26 people have been killed and as many injured when militants fired upon them. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
The old and young, all weary after being trapped for days as the worst floods have hit Kerala in a century.
3 days we are on a rooftop. They have no food, nothing.
The roads have been inundated. The only way out is to get people by boat. There have been reported deaths and many injuries, several critical.
Many families will grapple with the unimaginable loss of one of the worst disasters in India's aviation history.
The spiraling violence between two nuclear-armed neighbors that harbor decades of hostility just seems to be getting worse by the day.
Garbage dumps like this not only threaten the lives of millions of people, but also pose a deadly consequence on the environment and climate.
It is a source of death, decay, disease and pollution for hundreds of thousands of people living in its shadows.
There is so much disease because of this garbage. Sometimes it's so difficult to just breathe.
companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Over the next 45 days, an estimated 400 million Hindu pilgrims are expected to converge here in Prayagraj on the banks of the holy river Ganga and Yamuna. It's a real kaleidoscope of people from all walks of life.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, James Rampton and Kirsty Buchanan. Kirsty, take us to the Daily Mail. The headline, Labour's doctors strike hypocrisy. What is this about?
This is a Conservative attack line. I think Conservatives will be very happy to make the front page of a newspaper. It's quite rare occurrence these days in a Farage-dominated political landscape. So in essence, it's the Conservative business spokesman Andrew Griffiths taking a pop at the Health Secretary Wes Streeting for his tough language with the British Medical Association and the forthcoming action of resident doctors, we call them now. We're not allowed to call them junior doctors anymore. Now, this strike action is about pay. They had a very healthy pay settlement last year, I think about 29%. They've come back for the same again. And a ballot for strike action on the basis of a 55% turnout. Now, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, said, look, you know, this strike is completely unreasonable and unacceptable. And Andrew Griffiths from the Conservatives is saying, well, you know, you are hypocrites because your flagship legislation, the employment bill, will actually remove the threshold that the Conservatives put in to legislate for a ballot. So at the moment, if you ballot for strike action, it has to be on a 50% turnout. This was at 55, so it just gets over the line. But if you remove that, of course, it's going to make it much, much easier for unions to strike. And the impact that we will see on this, for argument's sake, in the NHS, one of the few bright spots for Labour's very tricky first year is actually those waiting lists are coming down.
Yeah.
It was one of the main rationales for settling last year was to say, look, it's very important to settle so that we can start to tackle those waiting lists. Well, if the resident doctors go out and strike 5 days from the 25th of July, then we're going to see not just trust in the system erode, but also, obviously, those waiting lists potentially creep back up again, and that would be a disaster.
Politically disastrous. Sorry, yes.
Do you think the strikes will go ahead? I mean, Wes Streeting is speaking with them.
It may be a bit of brinkmanship on both sides, actually. What I think is interesting is the way the public seem to have turned against doctors. All the polling suggests that people, and I would absolutely underline that I think the NHS is perhaps the greatest thing this country's ever done. And you mentioned it before. Untold wonders, brilliant doctors, incredible service, all free. But the second year of demanding 29%, when the cost of living crisis is making so many people suffer and so many people are feeling the pinch, and then they think, well, doctors will eventually earn quite a good living as consultants and they could do private work as well if they want to, so they don't have to stay within the NHS. And people are saying, wait a minute, we're really making a lot of sacrifices just to keep a roof over our heads. Is it fair that the doctors, because they have this Olympian, almost divine status in our society, can make these demands when so many other people are suffering? So I absolutely support the NHS, and I think doctors are probably the most revered people in our society, but they may have pushed it too far this time, and that's why the public are expressing some disillusionment.
Yes, and we have heard from some very senior doctors saying that, you know, they fear that doctors will lose the trust of the public completely.
Yeah. Robert Winston has left the BMA in fury at their demands.
But the trouble with this is, what has the Labour government put out into the world over the last 2 or 3 weeks? It said, if you push us, we will cave.
Well,
you know, that's the lesson of the welfare reform. That was the lesson of the backbench revolt. You know, and that is what has turned up the temperature, I think, for unions. And I think the RCN are looking at potential strike action for nurses as well. And also, there are some rumblings that the teaching unions may ballot for strike action too. So this could be the beginning of a very long, hot summer.
Well, talking of politicians and how they're being responded to, let's have a look at the front page of the Metro. Apparently, we don't trust any of them, James.
Well, this is a great story because we all need a bit of lightheartedness at the moment. There's so much grim news around, and...
Well, this is grim news for the politicians.
It's true, but most of us aren't politicians, so it's the old Schadenfreude thing again. A new poll by More Common suggests that 90% of us have little or no faith in the political class, and I love this fact. A shocking 60%, the poll says, would not trust Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage to even watch their bags. I love that, that they're so untrustworthy that if you're in an airport, say, I just need to go to the loo, could you watch it? And they'd be running out, jumping into a taxi, waiting outside Stansted, just because they're so untrustworthy. So I think it does reflect this terrible sense, and the piece is emphasising that the most commonly associated word with politicians is broken, and that this country is broken. And I think that attitude towards politicians does reflect a great sense of anger and disenchantment and even lividness with what politicians are doing. People are feeling they're not being heard, and it's the same forces that, in my view, drove Trump to the White House. You know, that sense of we are people who are not being listened to, and we're angry about it, and we're blaming politicians for that.
Kirsty, you've got about 20 seconds.
OK, in some senses, it's the least fascinating news story of all time. People have never really trusted politicians, have they? Let's be honest. But in a polarised society, I'm delighted to see that we can unite behind our hatred of politicians.
James, thank you so much.